Welcome to Healing Wisdom, a Thursday morning talk show featuring guests sharing their stories and knowledge. We discuss the healing aspects of the arts, metaphysics, social justice, and adventure through all types of terrain. So join me, Pandora Peoples, here on WOMR 92.1 FM in Provincetown and WFMR 91.3 FM in Orleans. We're streaming worldwide at WOMR.org. Today we're speaking with actress Mink Stoll, who is going to be a guest at the Tennessee Williams Festival Gala on Saturday, June 1st. We'll also be speaking with Synchronous, who will be at the Hawthorne Barn as part of the 20 Summers lineup, and that's happening on Sunday, June 2nd. My first guest, Mink Stoll, has appeared in every single John Waters feature film since 1966, beginning with Roman Candles. She's currently touring with Peaches Christ in Idol Worship. Welcome, Mink. Thank you so much for being with us.
Incredibly excited about coming to Provincetown.
Before we get into being one of John Waters' Ensemble cast members, referred to as the Dreamlanders, tell us about the gala coming up on June 1st.
Well, it's interesting because I'm not exactly sure. I know that there's going to be day drinking, and there will be a conversation. David Kaplan, who has put the festival together and runs it for years, is an old friend of mine, and he and I will be having a rather interesting conversation about, in particular, Streetcar Named Desire, and some other female characters that Tennessee Williams has written.
Is there any similarity in how John Waters features women, or what his relationship is with women, or does it contrast with the way that Tennessee Williams relates to women?
I actually had never really given that any thought until David Kaplan brought it up with me today, and it is something we are going to talk about, disruptive women. So yes, there are some correlations. You have to remember, however, Tennessee Williams was writing in a certain time, and John Waters is writing in a completely different time. So the dynamics between men and women and and women in the world are completely different in the varying time frames. So Tennessee was writing in a time that no longer exists. We can't even fathom what it was like when women didn't work, and women were spinsters at 25. And John doesn't really deal with spinsters. So they're very different, but they are similar in that they are vivid.
What are your thoughts on Divine embodying femininity?
Divine never thought of himself as a drag queen. Or he didn't. Well, I don't know if that's completely true. He may have on occasion thought of himself as a drag queen, but he didn't think of himself as a drag actor. He thought of himself as a man who played women's parts. And he played them as women. He did not play them for camp. He did not play them as outlandish. He played them as authentic and real as he could. And they came across as women. They did not come across as caricatures of women. So that's a little bit different from other drag queens who are an exaggeration. The way he looked sometimes seemed like an exaggeration, but the way he performed it real.
How did you meet John Waters?
I met him on the streets of Provincetown. I had gone up in the summer of 1966. I was up there to visit my sister who was there, and she knew him from Baltimore, casually, not well, but she knew him, and we ran into him on the street. And it was, hello, Nancy, which was my name, meet John. And it was, and by the end of the summer, I hadn't even planned to stay the summer, but I liked it so much. I got a job and was living with my sister, and then John, my sister, and about 17 other people started living together in a kind of a handmade house at the very end of town that was owned by a guy named Prescott Townsend. It was quite a place. You had to climb a gangplank to get to it. It was a compound. It's not very good. It burned down in 1968.
Did that time in Provincetown together, the 20 of you all packed in, inspire or impact his filmmaking, his creative process, or any of the stories that he told with you, like your characters?
You have to ask John what his writing process is. I know that he gets up every morning and he writes from 6 to noon. He is incredibly disciplined, and he gets his ideas from all sorts of places. He reads a million newspapers and magazines, so he gets ideas from everywhere. How he comes up with his characters, though, is always a mystery to me. I really don't get it. I don't know where he thinks these things up. I'm fascinated by it, but I've never really tried to analyze it. I've just accepted it as a thing that is.
So he hands you the sides, he hands you the script, and you just...
And I say, thank you. And I learn the lines and I come to set ready to say them.
Do you want to talk about his ensemble cast, the Dreamlanders?
Well, the ensemble cast has changed, dramatically over the years because of the original ensemble. I'm pretty much the only one left. Mary Vivian Pierce is still alive, and Susan Lowe is still alive, but David Locklear's gone, Divine is gone, Edith is gone. So our original cadre, if you want to call it that, has been completely disrupted. We've had new people come in. We had Patty Hearst come in. We had Tracy Lords come in. We had Kathleen Turner, who, although she's only been in one film, feels like family. So, the family changed, but it's different now. Also, we haven't made a movie together since 2002 or 3. It's been a while.
After the first couple of films, did you have any idea how things would progress?
I had no idea. There was absolutely no way to predict what was going on. The first film that we made together is 3 8mm films shown at the same time with tape recorder. It's not, there was no way to predict or to foresee in any way at all that John would have become the personage that he is today. That there's a museum in Hollywood, the Museum of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, has a whole floor devoted to John and devoted to us in our early career, and to John and his own acting career. So it's been a ride. And I say this frequently. I'm glad when I was younger and working with John in the early days, I'm glad that I didn't know. I'm glad that none of us knew. I know it would have changed me. It would have made me insufferable. But I think it would have changed everybody if we hadn't been taking it for what it was that moment. We hadn't been just right there, right then. If we'd been thinking about what was going to come next, I don't think any of us would have done what we did.
Can you tell us a little bit about the process? Did you guys improvise at all?
There's no improvisation going on. We were expected to know our lines. When we got to the set, we knew our lines. There was no improv. John would stand behind the camera and mouth all the dialogue. He knew every word. So, it was tightly controlled chaos. There was plenty of room for laughter. We enjoyed ourselves. We had a good time, but we worked. We paid close attention to what we were doing, and we all really did as good a job as we could.
Can't help it, the girl can't help it. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. If she walks by, the men folks get engrossed. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. If she winks an eye, the bread slice turn to toast. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. If she got a lot of what they call the mold. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. The girl can't help it, she was born to please.
If folks are just joining us now, you're listening to Healing Wisdom on WOMR, and we're speaking with actress Mink Stoll, who's going to be in Provincetown at the Tennessee Williams Gala, and that's happening Saturday, June 1st. There'll be live performances, hors d'oeuvres, creative drinks, and an auction. Folks can get tickets at twptown.org. Provincetown has a special Tennessee Williams connection. He used to come here to work on his plays. Mink Stoll, you've been in the Tennessee Williams Festival.
I did 2 plays. In 2011, I did a play called And now the cats with jeweled claws. And if you ask me to explain it to you, I can't. I didn't understand it when I was rehearsing it. I didn't understand it when I was performing it. It's a very odd experimental play. It is nonlinear and it's wacko. I had a good time with it because I got to be in Provincetown, and then we did it again in New York, and that was great. The next play that I did, which was 2 years later, is called The Mutilated, and that was a completely different experience. It was wonderful. Penny Arcade was my co-star, and we played two women in the French Quarter who were past our prime and struggling and broke. And it was called The Mutilated, partially because my character had a mastectomy. So she felt physically mutilated, but everybody was kind of mutilated spiritually and economically. And it was the two characters are frenemies. And when the play opens, they're in very enemy territory. So it's how they get through this and come back to their codependent friendship. They're not really friends, but they desperately need each other. And I loved doing that play. That we did it at the Gifford House, if you know the Gifford House, and we started outside. It was such a creative. Cosmin Shibu directed it, and he started us outside, and we went inside. We did scenes all around the hotel. It was great. I loved it. I've never done anything quite like that before or since. That I'm kind of reading right now. I'm reading Summer and Smoke, and of course Streetcar and Night of the Iguana. I'm immersing myself kind of in these characters, and I will have more to say about them at the event. There's sort of a Madonna over here and the whore over here, and there's a lot of sexual tension and women who either have too much sexuality or not enough, or they're not in touch with it. And I mean, these are still current characters, but with his women, there's a certain, if they don't have some kind of a male, they all have to have a man because there is no other way to live. There's no other way to survive. They don't work. They don't have jobs. They can't get jobs. I mean, Alma in Summer and Smoke, she gives music lessons, she gives voice lessons, but she lives with her father and mother. And, and she's in her late 20s. So but she considers herself a spinster. So there's, this inability to sort of break out of a confined social cage, in a sense. And I mean, I think the men are also in these cages. I don't think it's just the women, but it's there is a lot of Tennessee Williams women have a certain desperation. Blanche in Streetcar is desperate. Alma in Summer and Smoke is desperate. I forget the name of the woman in Night of the Iguana, but she's kind of desperate. So it's this kind of a grasping for something. And a lot of it is a grasping for safety and security. And looking for a safe place, looking for a place where you can finally go, where you can exhale, and let, and be okay. I mean, I think maybe Desperate Living of John's films would be the closest to Tennessee Williams because the characters are all so desperate. So I think, that could be a Tennessee Williams play.
What's the most memorable part you played?
I spent a day in an iron lung. There is something so strange about being in this because it's a metal tube. My head was outside. My body was inside. There was a mirror above my head where I could see other people. I could see people around me, but I could not see myself. I could feel myself. I knew I was there, but we see ourselves. Unless you've experienced it, there's kind of just no way to describe what it's like to have absolutely no physical, visual connection with your own self. But that was weird. But at the end of the day, the crew applauded me. And that was really incredible. That was a very, very big moment for me. Thank you very much. This was fun.
You're looking at me 'cause I'm the king.
So today we welcome Synchronous, a creative lab and performance group founded last year by Stephanie Shin. You guys are coming to P-Town June 2nd at the Hawthorne Barn as part of the 20 Summers program. And folks can get tickets for your performance at their website, 20summers.org. And I would love for you all to just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourselves before we find out about how you came together, what your group is all about, and what your whole mission is.
My name is Stephanie Shin. I'm a dancer artist based in New York City.
Hello. I'm Emily. I am also a dancer, freelance artist, choreographer. I teach Pilates on the side, do arts administration, also based in New York City.
Maya. I'm also a dancer, an interdisciplinary artist based in New York, and I also teach Pilates and do arts admin on the side.
Hi, I'm Selena Haber, born and raised in New York City. I am a dancer and I am also a diagnostic medical sonographer.
Hello, my name is Rachel Hollandley. I'm also an artist based in New York City, mostly movement-based / a dancer, but I also am a journalist. I photograph, do little illustrations on the side, anything in the arts field, really. Yeah, and I'm so excited to be here.
How did you all come together?
We came together last year. I had been freelancing in New York for a year, almost 2 years. Speaking to each one of these members individually, we had all kind of experienced something very similar, if not the same thing. And so we just wanted to create work together that was highlighting our voices and like our diverse voices. I think also the diversity in the dance world surprised me in New York, how many spaces were not diverse at all. So I think creating that space was really important. And honestly, I just wanted to create dance and dance together. And so we came together last year to perform or to premiere Synchronicity, which was our first piece. And it was really about those like moments that kind of pass us by. For example, like there were during the rise of anti-Asian hate in New York, there were a lot of moments where I would kind of meet eyes with other Asian women waiting for the train. And I would kind of feel this solace with them, knowing that they were there. And that was kind of the inspiration for the piece, just those moments where we overlap with others that make us feel comfortable, make us feel safe. Yeah. And then out of that, we wanted to keep working together. We just really liked what we created and loved working together. So Synchronous was born out of that.
Would you like to speak on mindfulness and the mind-body connection?
So I've been working in healthcare for many years now, at least 6. And I actually started as a physical therapy aide, which very much connects mind and body together, especially with dealing with injury. You have to really pay attention to your body's cues and make sure you're not further hurting yourself or pushing yourself a little too hard. In college, I did a piece that connected biology and dance together. It was the only time that I've ever really connected the two. And it's not personally something that I usually connect together. Biology has always been about working and a job. And then dance has always been love and passion for me. So connecting the two is not something I'm huge on, but there is a subconscious connection no matter what.
Can you talk about the importance of movement?
I think movement in general is a very connective force. I think something that is not based, it's not verbal, it's movement. You're using your body. A lot of people describe it as our first language. So I think it really has a unique ability to bridge the gap for people and for groups of people. And I think that, like you were saying, with kids being in classrooms, sitting down, I think sometimes there's the tendency for that to be lost and people having to reconnect to it, right? Reconnecting to their body. I think for me personally, and I can't speak for everyone, but for me personally, dance was always that force for me that kind of connected my mind and my body. And I think that it really is something for everyone. And so something that we are all passionate about as well is making dance accessible to people. Right. Making the barriers to entry lower, doing freer showings or low cost performances and coming into communities that might not have access to dance as well.
And I just want to add to that, Emily, because that's so true. I think I fully believe that everybody dances. Everyone's always like, oh, you're a dancer. Oh, I'm such a bad dancer. And I'm like, oh, but it doesn't matter. You can move your body, right? It's accessible to everyone in that way. And I think what we're planning on doing at 20 Summers also will kind of explore that. We're at our showing on June 2nd. We're hoping to kind of open up our creative process and also get the audience to kind of work with us and like see what it's like to kind of create movement in our world and see what they can do with that as well, even if they're not, you know, quote unquote, a dancer or a good dancer.
Dance can sometimes have, it can be placed on this pedestal and it's sort of untouchable for people, right? They're like, oh, well, I'm not a dancer. Like it's kept within this proscenium stage, this shrine that people feel they can't touch. That's very elite. But I'm really excited for what we're going to do. I think it's going to be contrary to a lot of those popular beliefs.
If anyone's ever done any therapy, or if we're talking mental health and mental wellness in that sort of realm, one of the first things that I've been asked in those situations are what are the physiological symptoms that you're feeling that are relating to specific emotions. And so I think that connection between your mind and your body is really important. Our movement and our creative process is often a release of certain emotions. And when you're on the opposite end of viewing or absorbing the art that you're seeing, like that can elicit a certain emotionality from the other side as well.
Can you talk about how you choreograph together?
Yeah, that's actually a great segue to discuss what we're doing at 20 Summers as well. As I mentioned before, we're really focused on collaboration and just communication. And I think that shows in our choreographic process. And this, for 20 Summers, throughout this week of this residency, we're so grateful to have the time really to dive into this and honestly kind of trial for the first time. Since we've only been around for a year, we haven't had many resources to be able to really just focus on our creative process. Normally it's been like for a show or we're creating a piece. So we're really excited to have this week to really focus on that and kind of trial what it means to be even more collaborative. So each member of this collective will be kind of leading one morning, one day of a creative process. And typically that will start with journaling or some sort of reflection. And I think that's really common in our creative process collectively, is like we always start from some sort of kernel idea, even if it's really abstract or not very clear yet. And we typically will spend some time reflecting, journaling, discussing, and then using that as a basis for movement creation. So that will be the basis of what we're doing throughout the week. And that will be also what I mentioned before, kind of what we're hoping to show in a very short amount of time, obviously, at the showing on the 2nd.
Any thoughts about getting out of your head or getting out of your own way?
It takes a lot of practice in the same way that as dancers, we might practice a lift or a certain sequence of movement. The mind, in a way, is another muscle, and getting out of the habit of thinking in a more like mentally healthy like mindset is a practice. I think for myself, a lot of that is rooted in sort of the journaling that Stephanie was talking about, and taking the time to reflect on where I'm at, because the mind and body can be so connected. I think if you have thoughts of doubt or insecurity, etc., that does affect your body and the way you move. Like the same way when you're sad, like you can feel like the tension in your shoulders, or like you're like crying as a reaction. Like I feel like any thought like that is just held within your body. Something we all do together actually before we perform is we'll like circle up and we'll take a couple breaths together just to ease our mind and to connect with one another. I think this idea of safe spaces is also very important for us, both in a physical way, but also in a both mentally, so that we are all like aligned and feel like our voices can be heard and we can share ideas and we can be collaborative. I think for us, a lot of that trust is always needed in every environment you are in, especially as an artist. And so I think we try to find ways to make that happen so that each of us can feel vocal, feel like we can be vocal, or that we're valued, and that our voice matters in the room.
Something that's really unique to this group is that we can all show up as we are and be honest in that. So if there are days when we show up and we're very much in our head, if it's reflected in what we're doing, how we're moving, there's not the fear of, oh, I need to make myself show up so that I can please this person, so that I can get this done, I can whatever it might be, whatever internal pressures we put on ourselves, we can be a little bit more at ease because there isn't that external pressure in this group. And I think your question is interesting because it is so individual. How do you get out of your head? If anybody knows one surefire way to get out of your head, let me know, because I would love to know it. For me, sometimes that means actually taking a step back from dance, just going on a walk, doing something that's completely separate from dance and the craft itself. Maybe I go see some other art, something else that might inspire me in a different way. I think that refreshes me and I can come back without those pressures inside. So this group though is definitely a grounding force, and I think it's very unique in that way.
Can you talk more about this idea of safe spaces?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's interesting that you picked up on the idea of safe spaces as well, because that's going to be kind of our kernel of creation going into the week of 20 Summers. That idea, we started off by I just kind of left open-ended journaling questions to everyone to fill out. Just kind of like, what does that mean to you? And how, what even physically, what do you picture? Is it, grass, a beach? For me, it's near the water. I don't know why, because I grew up in the Midwest, but now it's near the water. And then, but also emotionally, as you said, what does that seem, or how does that feel? So I think that's interesting that you picked that up, because that's exactly what we're going to be discussing all week, and something that is, at least for me, my main goal is for everyone to feel safe, because I also feel that in creation process, the safer you feel and the more okay you feel sharing your opinions, the better it is for everyone, right? It can lift up everyone collectively if we all feel like we can contribute equally, or if we can all feel heard. I also think because we all have such different backgrounds, and we all have, we're just very different people too. Even dancers, were very different dancers as well. I think knowing that we can all kind of share and move forward in that way is really exciting. And I just hope that in terms of the future, that's kind of will always be our North Star when we're creating.
Yeah, I also feel like belonging and safety are so parallel to one another. I think when we pull it out of just a dancer or artist sense, even with your friends or your peers, you feel a sense of freedom and the sense of flow to say whatever you want, I guess, if you're comfortable with someone, if you have this sort of safety. And so it's important to kind of establish those safe spaces and be vocal and not apologetic about what our needs are as individuals, to feel this sense of belonging and this sense of safety. Because at the end of the day, in our creative process, my hope for us is that we would feel comfortable and free in that same way as you would be with a friend or environment, or your family.
I'll add that I think that this very intentional facilitating of a safe space internally translates externally. And I think one of the most important aspects of art is the community building aspect that it has the power to do. And I think that by creating an organization that from the inside out is a safe space, that will attract a community that has a like-minded interest in cultivating a space like that. And so it'll be a win-win for us and the community that we're building.
Personally, growing up and sharing my opinion throughout dance has not been encouraged. And being in this space with these artists, it's been a little difficult for me to do that. But they've always encouraged it and made it an environment where if I do share something, it's showed value and respect. So I'm really excited for the week to come, because it'll be able to practice sharing my opinion and growing with these beautiful dancers.
Thank you so much, Synchronous, for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate being here.
You've been listening to Healing Wisdom at Outermost Radio. All of our shows are podcasts at WOMR.org. Also check out healingwisdomradioshow.com and contact me at Pandora@WOMR.org.